Frances, welcome back. Thank you so much for Ammonite. I want to start by asking about Mary Anning. How did you discover her and know that you wanted to make a film around her?
Thank you, Tricia. So I first discovered Mary Anning when I was looking for a present for my then boyfriend. And he really liked polished stones and fossils. And so I was just doing a regular Google search and this lady's name kept coming up, Mary Anning, Mary Anning. So I read about her. And I read how she was born into a life of poverty. She was a working class woman. She had little to no education, but she rose to being one of the most leading paleontologists of her generation. And she also lived in, the 19th century England, which was an incredibly patriarchal, class-ridden society. And I think I felt instantly drawn to her because, I saw some kind of parallels with my life, a working class filmmaker with not a lot of education, who, was desperate to make film, couldn't find a way in. And there were just certain things about her that really struck with me and struck with things I wanted to explore.
And it's like God's Own Country. It's such a beautiful tactile film with so many textures. Lyme Regis is obviously a gorgeous, gorgeous setting for the film. But can you talk about thinking about the sense of place and working with your DOP to create the incredible textures that we've just seen in the film?
Yeah, as well as being drawn to stories about working class people, I'm very drawn to landscapes. And once I'd read about Mary Anning, I went to Lyme Regis and walked on those beaches where she worked and lived. And in a sense, it was such a wonderful backdrop because those landscapes are fairly inhospitable. They're brutal. It's often cold and wet, and then you've got the sea that can be incredibly rough. And I was really fascinated with how somebody would work on those beaches, really put up with that climate and that weather, and how dangerous it is to go and fossil on those cliffs and stuff. And then I was very, very lucky to work with a wonderful cinematographer called Stéphane Fontaine. And I think very early on, we went to Lyme Regis again, and we very much looked at that landscape, and we started to think about how we wanted to frame it. And I knew I didn't really want to see the landscape in a kind of overwhelming or bucolic way. And so we worked very hard on seeing the landscape's effect on the characters, and how that kind of had an effect on them emotionally and physically.
And into this setting, you place two of our greatest actresses. So the film doesn't work unless, particularly Mary works. Can you talk about how you started working with Kate and when you knew she was right for Mary?
So when I write a film, a story, I don't particularly write with an actor in mind. And so I'd finished the script and I started to think about who would be good to play Mary. And the story I've told about Mary is when Mary is in her mid-40s. And so I knew I wanted an actor who was the right age. I knew I wanted to work with someone who was British for this film. It felt such a British story. And I knew I wanted to work with someone who I think has real truth in their work. And so on the short list of one was Kate Winslet. And so the script went to Kate. Kate brilliantly read it the same day and loved it and joined the film pretty much straight away. And when we started to talk, we discovered we like to work a very similar way, which is very character driven. And so Kate and I started to work maybe 5 months before the shoot on building this character of Mary as we saw her, and really researching her biography, her background, discovering everything about her from from the moment she was born until the moment we meet her in the film. It was really, really exciting to see Kate take that on. And then, you know, again, I'm a huge fan of actors living the roles, if you like, and learning everything that the character does for real. So Kate went down to Lyme Regis and worked on the beaches for weeks and weeks and weeks, fossiling. She got cold and wet and tired and mucky, but she became very, very knowledgeable and incredibly skilled at finding fossils. And again, I think that really underpins her performance.
And you worked with her for 5 months and you did the research. How much did the script evolve in this time, in the storyline?
Not an awful lot, really. The script, you know, I think what we discovered when we were doing the research was much more to do with the physical work of finding fossils. And so the script developed in that sense, but in terms of the story and the story arc and the emotional range, it was kind of the same.
Can you talk a little bit about casting Saoirse?
Yeah, so for the role of Charlotte, which Saoirse brilliantly plays, I knew I wanted somebody whose work felt incredibly truthful and authentic, and so I was again drawn to Saoirse, and again very lucky that she read the script and came on board. We went through the same process as I did with Kate, and Saoirse learned everything her character does in the film for real. So she's playing an upper class character, so there wasn't so much fossiling and outside stuff and getting cold and wet. There was lots of sitting around and learning how to play the piano and learning needlepoint and all the things that her character knew incredibly well. And then when Kate and Saoirse started to work together, it was really fantastic that they had this wonderful support for each other and chemistry on screen. Yeah, it was really cool.
How long was that a rehearsal process with the three of you guys working together?
I think for the rehearsal process, I think all together, we probably had about a month, me, Kate and Saoirse together. Before that, we were doing our individual kind of things.
And they do have such great chemistry on screen as well too. What was for you, Frances, directing this, what was the most pleasurable part of directing the film?
I think, you know, for me, always the things that I love in the shoot are working with the actors, you know, having that bond with them, all collaborating to the same end, you know, having that open dialogues, crafting those performances with them. And that was fantastic. I loved working with all the actors, not just Kate and Saoirse, but Fiona Shaw, Alex Sekarenu, James McArdle, all of them. And I love working with the cinematographer. You know, that to me feels like an extension of the performance, how the camera moves, how we frame it, and so on and so forth. So those were like the most enjoyable things for me on set.
And is the editing process for you the same sort of discovery process that making the film is?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. On Ammonite, I worked with my editor from God's Own Country, Chris Wyatt, and I made him move to Yorkshire again to do the edit in Yorkshire. I'm not sure he'll ever do that again, but we edited together in Yorkshire in the village down the road from where I live. And basically we approach it like that is where we find the film, you know, that is where we change things and move things and put things back together and have a sense of play within that. It was Chris who helped me discover that way of working on God's Own Country, and it's so creative and wonderful.
And I'm thinking in particular of the last scene of the film, which people have just seen, and the way you use music in the end credits. Was that something that you sort of discovered in the edit, or did you always know where you would leave the audience?
A bit like God's Own Country, I think, had 3 endings. And I think Ammonite had about 3 endings as written in the script. And I shot them all, and then we played with them. I mean, every single ending was hopeful. There was not a chance I was going to leave this pair with a really sour ending. But yeah, so in the edit, we worked with the idea of which ending we were going to go with, and this one felt most appropriate. With the music, I'm afraid I'm like some old sad 1980s cliche, because like I love in a film where you go out on a big nice piece of music or a song or a ballad, something like that. Honestly, all I'm trying to do is recreate Officer and a Gentleman and that song at the end. That is my ambition in filmmaking.
Well, that is a very fine ambition indeed. Thank you so much, Francis. We are so honoured to have closed the BFI London Film Festival with Ammonite, and we thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tricia, and thank you and all your team at London Film Festival for the incredible support and putting on an incredible festival despite Herculean opposition. So thank you to you.
Thank you.